I consider DLD to be the breakfast of the year. Yeah? And we all know that the breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yeah? So what I want to talk about is not about the new stuff. Yeah? I think that we as society have, or as technologists and as digital leaders, have a responsibility to use our technology for good. What does that mean? And I'm going to do that by actually sort of going a little bit back in history, but also talking about the things that work really well when using AI. So I really want to talk about how to use AI for good, or how companies are already using AI for good. John McCarthy is one of the founders of modern artificial intelligence, meaning that he was at Dartmouth in, was it 1956, I think, when the term was being coined. And as soon as it works, you don't call it AI anymore. And if you can also turn it around to say everything that we call AI today is probably not really working well. Yeah? But that's a different approach. I actually want to, you can't understand where we are right now with AI by going a little bit back in history. And history actually means going 3,000 years back. Yeah? Aristotle and Plato were already discussing the role of machines and how they could make machines think. Yeah? Thinking, and of course Aristotle was really about sort of, it's in your head, and Plato was more, it's in your body, it's your soul. But they both agreed on that the brain actually works by manipulating symbols. And so actually Plato went as far that in the Republic, he describes a city-state where machines, robots, are actually doing human chores around. This is 3,000 years ago. Well, to be honest, nothing happened in those 3,000 years. Yeah? Until we start building computers, because that suddenly becomes actually something that also manipulates mathematical symbols. And so suddenly we started thinking, can we actually use these computers to make things think? And actually the one that really actually put that on the map is our modern-day technology philosopher. Yeah? Turing, with the Turing test, already proposed to think like, can we make these machines think? Yeah? And I absolutely think that sort of he was the foundation of how we think about modern AI technologies. And it isn't until 1956 when a bunch of researchers come together in Dartmouth to actually coin the term artificial intelligence. But they were still what do we call encephalocentrist. Yeah? Thinking about it needs to be top-down. We need to start thinking whether we can actually make machines think like humans think and then control the rest. And it actually resulted in things like expert systems. That's me when I still had hair. I actually built a few of these using Prolog. Yeah. They didn't really work that well in those days. I think it did drive towards what we call automated reasoning today. That's a field that works really well, but not in the way that we thought about it in the 1950s. What the big change was is actually what's called embodied AI, where the guys who wanted to do robotics actually thought about using human-like sensors, bottom up, to actually make the robots work. Meaning about natural language processing, vision, sound processing, all these kind of things, instead of top-down, from the brain down, from the body up. Yeah, and to be honest, we managed to do that really well. These robots, is one of the Amazon fulfillment centers, are actually completely autonomous. They can't be in each other's way. They're giving a task and actually fulfilling the task by itself. All of this is AI. And we've been doing that for a very long time already, for the past 25 years. If you've been an Amazon customer, are there any people in the room that are not an Amazon customer? I'll need to talk to you later. Yeah. You've been using AI for the past 25 years. Similarities, recommendations, how we manage reviews, how we protect you by fraud, all of that is AI. Yeah? How we try to counterfeit goods, using AI. And most of this actually, the back button doesn't work. Can I go back one? I accidentally hit the back button. Doesn't really work that well. Okay. Anyway, all the technologies that you saw over time, like deep learning, reinforcement learning, transformers, supervised, unsupervised learning, or self-learning, are all technologies that sort of step-by-step hardware, software improved to the point that where we are now. Now we have these large language models. I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, everybody else will talk about that. I won't talk about that. I'll talk about the stuff that works really well. By the way, not that those don't work really well already, but the application area is something that we're still all discussing on. There's tremendous impact, but it won't. What comes after this, I have an inkling, because the best way to predict the future is to invent it. So we're working on that. We're not going to talk about that either. We're going to talk about AI for now. What is the AI right now that works really, really well? And I'm going to use that by using all examples of companies that are actually solving really hard human problems using AI. Now, what are the really hard problems? We expect that in the coming 25 years, the population on Earth will grow by close to another 2 billion people. So the question is, how are you going to tackle that particular problem? And if you look at the sort of the UN mandate for sustainability, there's a whole range of things that we actually agreed upon as society in 2015 that we're all going to eradicate this. We're going to eradicate poverty and hunger. But if you add 2 billion people to the planet, how are you going to make sure that we can actually meet these goals? So let's start off with sort of around food. I've been very fortunate throughout my career to travel the world. And I actually made a video series of that called Now Go Build. That's the QR code for this. And the examples I'm going to use here is mostly that I encountered on my travels, where it turns out that many startups around the world are actually really focused on solving hard human problems, doing for good, while actually also making money. These two things are not mutually exclusive. You can build companies that do things for good, yet have a good sustainable living out of that. A good example is Hawa. That was actually the first one I met. In Indonesia, smallholder farmers have no identity, which means they cannot get a loan. And to buy seed for the coming season, they need to go to a loan shark, which charges between 50 and 60% interest, meaning that half of the money that you're going to make with your yield of your little plot of land is already going to the guy with the money. So Hawa gives people an identity, measures the plot of land that they want, measures the yield, puts all of that in a massive database, runs AI over that, and then actually sort of works in the data qualifier, then provides that information to banks and insurers. Banks would like to give these smallholder farmers a loan because they get a 100% repayment rate. So they're making use of giving these people an identity, creating a data set, running AI over that, seeing how they match against the general population. And they're now running in 8 different countries, using tens of thousands of farmers, things like that. Been really good. Now, one of the things that actually, when we talk about food, rice is the biggest staple in the world. 50% of humanity at this moment depends on rice. There is an organization in the Philippines, just outside Manila. It's called the International Rice Research Institute. They have, as a task or as a setting, is that they want to eradicate poverty, or eradicate hunger among those that depend on rice. They have 200,000 strands of DNA of rice in the freezer. Actually, and based on that, also the research is being done. One of the things is that they get these enormous sets of new types of rice to go into the freezer. Humans actually qualifying those seeds, whether they're right or not, actually creates a backlog. So they're making use of AI in this particular case to actually eliminate bad seeds from the input into it. Means that they no longer have a backlog. Rice doesn't go bad, the seeds don't go bad before that. They also built another amazing system. So most farmers that they're targeting, they don't have a good education. They can't read, write, they don't have cell phones, they don't have smartphones. They do have a phone in the village, though. So they can call into this system built by AI and using voice describe their patch of land. And then they get advice back how much fertilizer to use and when to apply it. Why is that important? Because most of these farmers are growing up with overusing fertilizer. They get all this runoff into the surrounding environments, which create major havoc in rivers and things like that around it. So again, these voice systems, based on AI, the Alexa, Siri, and whatever that you're all using, is all AI, and it works really well. Remember? Precision AI is one of these other companies that actually uses these drones to actually fly over fields and do precision, actually, fertilizing of individual plants around the world to be able to actually really, at a minuscule level, again, these drones and the detection of that is all AI. Now, it's not only rice that is a staple, protein is a staple in our world as well. However, we have a bit of a challenge there. If you want to grow more protein for people to consume, it can't be cattle. Yep. And don't be like Fox News. When I first said this, that I don't want to take your beef away. Yeah? I don't want to say that all of you need to go eat fish. Because, fish farming is the most efficient way to create protein. 1 kilo of fish feed actually results in 1 kilo of fish. For 1 kilo of beef, you need to have 7 kilos of feed to create that. Most inefficient way to do this. Now, a company called Aquabite, so these are the challenges when you actually do this, when you try to actually do this fish farming. And Aquabite actually has found a way around that. They have these massive pens in Norway, in Scotland, and in Chile, where each of these pens have about 200,000 fish in them. And of course, the biggest problem is if you put that many fish together, outbreaks of diseases and things like that are rampant. So they make use of computer vision there to identify the individual fish, to track them, to track their health, of 200,000 fish in each of these pens. Yeah? And so they do growth analysis, all these kind of things. And they've analyzed well over 1 billion fish by now using all sorts of sensors. Again, AI is the power that sits behind that. They overanalyze well over 1 billion fish and also have now this data set that is crucial for them to actually really build this to a much bigger level if we want to continue to feed the world with protein. By the way, just while we're talking about water and oceans, there's an interesting company in Ireland called Ocean. In general, when you do control around wind farms and wind floor openings, you have these massive old ships that do this. Ocean really wants to do this by using unmanned vehicles. And you can do this much cheaper, and I think they saved something like 500,000 tons of CO2 already by just having these unmanned vehicles do this, instead of having these old big ships do it. City of Amsterdam no longer wants these big ocean-going cruise ships. Why? Because if they run their engine at 10%, they emit as much CO2 as 50,000 trucks driving around Amsterdam for an hour. We all think that these airplanes are the biggest polluters. Think about when you're going on a cruise. So if you look at some of the other ones, let's talk about a bit about health, of course. Health is an area where massive investments are happening. You think about rural healthcare. Yeah? Absolutely 2 billion people actually do not have access to healthcare at all. So a company that actually solves this, or actually solves a particular issue, which is sort of the remote access to vaccines and healthcare, they have these drones that they've built that can deliver medicine out in the bush, very far away. Again, if you think about drones are 100% AI. Because you don't steer these drones. There is no pilot behind it. You give them a task, and they have to go there. In the meantime, they have to detect other birds flying around and don't fly into them. They have to find the right spot where to actually drop it off. They have to make sure that there's no dogs running around at that moment, no washing lines accidentally being spun up. All these kind of things are actually that these drones need to do autonomously. And it's AI. It just works really well. Dr. Consulta in Brazil, there's about 150 million people, mostly in the most poorest areas, that have no access to healthcare. They're basically medically homeless. Dr. Consulta uses data. They're a private organization. They have 200 clinics in all the favelas in and around Brazil, in those people that really need it. And they make use of AI to drive their costs down to a point that they become really cheap and affordable for everybody in those communities. And they track actually everything. They make use of AI, for example, to track pricing of medicine. How they can actually drive the cost of medicine down. They also make sure that they track everything from the patient throughout the whole process and are very big on prevention. But making use about data and knowledge about their customers or their patients to give them the right advice to be able to live healthier and as such drive healthcare costs down tremendously. Sygenics, another Irish company, tackles another problem. Apparently, and I didn't know this myself until I met them, 1 in 200 newborns will have some form of brain injury. In general, these brain injuries are not detected until months or years later, when it's too late. Yeah? And they would like to have a test. They have developed a test that you can do on newborns, just like we do a hearing test on newborns. Yeah, that actually newborns' EEGs are radically different from that of let's say, older people. And they make use of AI to actually interpret this data. They have a little cap that goes on the newborn, runs for a few minutes, and immediately they can detect whether there has been a brain injury or not, and as such do the prevention and make sure they get treated immediately instead of years later. Now, all of these are depending on these kind of technologies that are all AI technologies, but we don't call it AI anymore because it works. These technologies work really, really well, and we've been working on them for quite a long time. But none of this matters unless you have good data. Yeah, because remember that data is absolutely a privileged asset. So if you want to do good, we have to think about how privileged data actually is. A good example of that is when I met the humanitarian OpenStreetMap group in the Philippines. 2/3 of the Philippines is unmapped, meaning we don't know where the roads are. Why is that? Because the commercial mapping companies have no interest in areas that are not commercially interesting. So a very large part of this country is unmapped. Yet the Philippines sit in what's called Typhoon Alley. All the typhoons will hit the Philippines at some moment. You get earthquakes, massive human disasters. Red Cross can't go to places because there is no map of them. So these people walk around and actually create an open data set of maps of streets. And in those streets, where are the safe places? Where can people go? Where can they shelter? Where are hospitals? Where are clinics? All the data is not available, so you need to create this data to be able to act on it. So we need to, if you think about data access, and we want to do good, we have to make sure that we have democratized access to this particular data and those kind of data sets. And later on in the panel, we'll be talking a bit more about it, because remember, this AI is just a tooling. It's not the goal. Data, without data, there is no AI, and there is no insights. We need to make sure that the data is available, and the quality of data is as such that we can actually train on them. Now, a little bit of history. In the 90s, up until the end of the 90s, I think we used to only have structured data. What was that? On forehand, we already knew what kind of questions we wanted to ask. And as such, we collected the data in a format that we could answer those questions, SQL queries, basically. And we shifted away when storage became cheaper, definitely with cloud, and started collecting as much data as we could, even if we didn't know what kind of queries we wanted to ask against it. Why is that important? Yeah? Because if you collect all of this data, you still need to make sense of that data. It's basically that you have a massive, how should I say, you have all this data and you're looking for the insight into that. Yeah? So if you think about that, this is looking for a needle in a haystack, the best way to find the needle is to use a magnet. Machine learning / AI is the magnet we have to find the pot of gold we're looking for in our unstructured data. A company that or organization that I'm really proud of working with is Forn. Forn's goal is a non-profit organization, is to develop technologies to eliminate child sexual abuse online. And so they do this by have built a number of different tools. Spotlight is the first one of them. That is actually using the imagery of missing children and women and then match them against the database of every day in the US. 100,000 new ads are being published of escorts. And they match these missing children and women database against these new imageries of these escorts. And it turns out, this is a great example of automating something that you would not be able to do at this scale by using humans. They use AI for that. Yeah? They have already in the past years identified 18,000 victims of sex trafficking, including more than 6,000 children. And they give this information to law enforcement, who then acts on it. Another tool they've built is called Savor. Savor is all about eliminating CSAM material on your servers. If you have an online platform where you allow people to actually introduce imagery, you should make use of Savor. They have created a massive database of sexual exploitation material and actually can match that against their database. Many newspapers, online platforms are already using this technology to eliminate this kind of material from their online platforms. And it is also one reason for actually using this technology is that if you want to have humans look at this imagery, after 6 months, they're ready for therapy. Because there's a lot of really bad things going on in our digital world. They have already done this easily in the platforms that there are. They're available as a software as a service. And actually, if you have an online platform, you should be integrating this into your workflows. They're also building new technologies in and around, for example, grooming. What are typical grooming patterns? Make use of AI to look for all the digital interactions on your platform for patterns of grooming and then intervene into that. Now, I'll leave you with this idea that, if you want to do AI for good, we need to have good data. On the other hand, if you have good data, you really need to have good AI to get the insights out of that we are actually looking for. And to be honest, we need good people to do good work. We, as technologists, have a responsibility to solve the world's hardest problems. We can. We have the technology for that. And artificial intelligence plays a crucial role in all of that, in sifting throughout the tremendous amount of digital data that we create each day. We are the ones that actually should be driving this change and making sure that we use our technologies for good. We definitely are on board with that. And I'll leave you with the words of John McCarthy again. If it works, no one calls it AI anymore. With that, thank you.